Welcome back, and it's still Yo Joe June, and I'm furthering my adventures, or is that right? We are furthering the adventures? No, I don't know. We have fallen down here we go, wait a minute. We have fallen down the pit hole. No, that doesn't even sound now. No. I am continuing my viewing of the G.I. Joe movies for Yo Joe June, which will bleed over into July. What can I say? G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. It's a movie. The end. No, I'm kidding. No, don't. This is one that I did see in theaters. This is one that I don't know. There's... I don't know where to fall on this. Like, part of me wants to like this film because it went in its own direction. I kind of want G.I. Joe to do its own thing. I think I've said this several times in the past few episodes, where it's like I want it to do its own thing. I want it to be its own thing. Don't necessarily need it to reiterate what was in the from the 80s, but I also don't want it to be tone deaf to the characters and like kind of produced by people that actually like know the characters a little bit. The guy that directed this, let me get a name because I won't recall it properly. He directed the Mummy movies and everything. And of course, some of the characters of the Mummy movies, they all come back. Stephen Sommers returns and directs this. I guess the best way to go about this is good versus bad. Like what did I like? What didn't I like? I didn't like Snake Eyes' mask. Who in what part of development signed off on the fact that we were going to put lips on a fake mask? I didn't even really think of it until later, and somebody in Facebook pointed out where it's like, oh, that Snake Eyes looks like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I guess that's what they were trying to tie into. I guess maybe I don't know if that was a thing or whatever. No, they stepped that back come G.I. Joe Retaliation, and thankfully they stepped that back. Overall, when I saw this in the theater, I didn't really care for it in the theater. Now, over time, this movie's grown on me just a little bit. It's become a little bit more favorable over time. But the reveal, spoiler territories. If you don't want to hear this, hum the national anthem in your head. Whatever nation you're from, hum your nation's national anthem in your head. 3, 2, 1, and Rex being Cobra Commander is one of those, like I said, I like the twist, but I hate the twist, but I like the twist, but I hate the twist. I hate it, but I like it. I think in any other movie but G.I. Joe would be fine. I think it being in the G.I. Joe movie kind of mucks that up. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess in the comics, Cobra Commander had like a little bit more of a personality. We knew who he was in the comics versus in the cartoon, which for me it was the cartoon and the toys. And when it came down to the toys, the characters had blank personalities. They were either whatever the file cards were or whatever Little Paul made their backstories be. The little pantsless producer made their backstories be whatever. Him being Cobra Commander, and Baroness being Duke's fiance. How's that for a review? The two main baddies. Hot off of Doctor Who, I'm pretty sure, if I recall properly, this was pretty close to Doctor Who. We have Christopher Eccleston, who played Destro, and he was good at Destro until we got to the crappy CGI. I can't really complain about him being Destro. I mean, I don't know where I fall in this because I think like plot wise, it was kind of a G.I. Joe film, but it was kind of, I don't know, encompassing that early 2000s kind of how we tell stories. I mean, I think this came out roughly around the same time as Transformers, and I think it's just basically like my feeling is almost the same. Although I have more hate to the Bayformers than I do towards G.I. Joe the movie. They had these like power suits, and I just remember like anybody and everybody absolutely hating that. That's not G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe's about army heroes. And honestly, even today, I didn't have a problem then. I didn't even have a problem with the more recent viewing. G.I. Joe was always like kind of pushing the envelope of sci-fi. So I really didn't have much of a problem. And I remember, I don't know, like I never watched G.I. Joe Extreme or Sigma 6 or some of those other ones that came after the 80s Real American Hero version. So I don't know if there's any tie-ins to that kind of thing. But I mean, hell, at the time of this recording, there's Transformers Rise of the Beast that came out that has the spoilers, but has a tie-in to a new franchise of G.I. Joe films, of G.I. Joe tying into Transformers. Even though we haven't really done a good G.I. Joe film, we're going to fire off a multiverse right in the middle of it all. Anyway, rant over. In that movie, you kind of see a version of that power suit that's given to the one guy by one of the Transformers. So I guess the power suit is a Transformer now. If I recall, it was like they were prototypes and there was only 2 of them. So let's just give them to the rookies of our team. I don't want a direct rip off of the 80s cartoon, but you know, each character had their own individuality. They were their own person. I mean, we had this darn, am I allowed to say anything anymore? Thanks, YouTube. Gosh darn, golly gee willikers, YouTube. We have the stupid, you know, we have to hit on the guy has to hit on the girl and he gets the girl at the end, kind of stupid ass story that we have to have in the middle of our war movie, because why not? Why not? Just why not? But I guess I would like to see more so like units, you know, like that. I mean, not, you know, like I said, not a carbon copy of like the 80s cartoon, but maybe where it's like, you know, everybody had like their specialities, where it's like maybe we have a unit of like Duke going with a unit of Joes to the jungle, and we you know, you have your Tiger Force tie-in or whatever, and then we have you know, I don't know, Hawk lead a team of Joes to the Arctic. Since we had the Arctic in this movie, you know, and we get to see like Snow Job and Avalanche and Frostbite and maybe some of the other things. I think like before I watched this movie, like I was kind of going over my head what I wanted to talk about in the podcast, and I think like one of my complaints was going to be like, oh, we don't really see enough like G.I. Joe vehicles. And after like reviewing this movie like again, there's actually quite a bit. They're not really in the forefront. You see a lot of them in the background and a lot of them in the scene. Like, okay, the scene where like Duke and Ripcord go to the pit for the first time and they're going down this elevator that must be an ocean nightmare because there's no guide rails or whatever. And they're out in the middle of the desert, but they go through like 2-3 layers of like ocean training that is apparently under the desert, but above like all the housing units or anything. So if anything, you know, yeah, I mean, Cobra does breach the pit at one time, but hell, they could just shoot at the ceilings and bring the ocean down upon everybody. It's supposed to be sci-fi fantasy, and they kind of hit the sci-fi fantasy, but kind of like want to strafe realism, but they strafe the sci-fi fantasy. For me, I want sci-fi fantasy out of G.I. Joe. I don't want reality out of G.I. Joe. One of the things I will praise it upon is that I think this is kind of one of the first movie, well, this is the first movie, the first live action movie, but this kind of portrays the Joes as being an international team versus the real American hero being just an American team. Even though G.I. Joe is an American phrase, I actually kind of prefer the whole, like, the world, you know, they're a worldwide crime fighting organization, a worldwide military force or whatever, versus just something that's just USA, you know, something everybody can get behind, and all, yeah, it's all inclusive. Of course, you know, the whole premise of this movie, if you haven't seen this, I believe it's like free on YouTube's right now. I mean, if you want to watch it, it doesn't even cost you anything. And if not, you can pick it up in the bargain bin at Walmart. This is a movie I ended up having to buy twice. The first time I picked up on the bargain bin because it was this movie in Retaliation, and I'm like, oh, why not? It's a cheap movie and get 2 movies for the price of one. I remember them just being middle of the line, so it didn't offend me. But then I knew I wanted to review these. I wanted to review these movies, which included buying Snake Eyes. And, you know, I haven't seen Snake Eyes since in the theater, so when I was perusing the discount bin, it has these 2 movies and Snake Eyes, so you can actually get the 3 movies if you want physical media, or if not, you can stream it on YouTube. Just to get into further spoiler territories, that the Cobra organization, which I don't even think that really, I don't know if they even name drop that they are Cobra. at the time, because at the end of the movie something comes about. I'll touch on that in a minute, but they're just basically like it's almost like that they're becoming they're the upstarts. There's no you don't really there's no hint of hierarchy. I mean, you pretty much you have James McCullen, you have Destro, pretty much posing as the bad guy, and then you have Rex. But I don't think Rex doesn't go. He doesn't go by Rex. I think he might just go by the Doctor. I know. My last viewing of this, I kind of felt like I was misinformed. I always called him Dr. Mindbender, and there is a Dr. Mindbender in this film. It is not the Cobra Commander. He was the Doctor. I guess my assumption was that since they always called him the Doctor, that I just assumed it was Dr. Mindbender. But like I said, I just realized that, or after this last viewing, that there is a Dr. Mindbender, and he shows him the nanotech technology, and that's what this whole thing is kind of based on, where they're using nanomite warfare. That must have been a hip thing, a into thing in 2009, where we're gonna use that as weaponry. It's always been the thing with GI Joes. They always do you do usually utilize their weaponry, usually on an empty town or something like that, and they do utilize the nanotech on Paris of all places, but it's very strange, and I know I'm going to get to this when I get to Retaliation, but they always talk about the nanomite war, and they didn't really do much warring. They just fired at the Eiffel Tower. So that's basically that's kind of, I guess that's the MacGuffin. That's kind of the minor premise. I mean, we started off where Destro is showing this to, I guess, the UN or whatever, and it's put in Duke's care to transport it, and the Cobra forces steal it, and that's where you find out that Destro is duplicitous, duology. He's a bad guy. Yeah, even though they deactivate the tracking device, Destro reactivates the tracking device. Just kind of I don't know. Just kind of seems over complicated, over convoluted. Again, this is GI Joe. I guess you don't really go in there for the deep thoughts, and I maybe I'm imparting too much deep thoughts into this. I mean, I guess the overall goal isn't using this as bombs or weaponry, but to actually implant Zartan as the president of the United States of America by using it as face changing. How about that? That's a little bit better than putting the president in there, putting Zartan in there with a rubber mask and him being the president with a rubber goddamn mask. A little bit more believable. All right, I'll give him that. That's one reality. That's one reality thing that can be in your GI Joe movie. That all right. Good on you. You can't wear a rubber mask, even though that does come into play in Retaliation. Rex and Anna are brother and sister, and Duke brings Rex into a mission because he's a computer specialist, a hacker, and he was supposed to get some data from one of the bases before it gets before the air raid comes and gets blown to all hell. And in doing the mission, the air raid happens too soon. Duke is unable to save Rex. Rex gets bombarded by bombs and presumably dies. The other aspect was that Duke had just asked Anne to marry him, and that all falls apart when he kills her brother. We see the other side of Rex's perspective, where he's in the bunker with Dr. Mindbender, and the project that they're working on is, of course, this nanomite project, and that's when he gets a hold of it, and that's it. That's the plot. That's the thing. That's it. That's the thing. That's it. That's the thing the bad guys were trying to get a hold of. It's the MacGuffin. It does everything. I mean, they have their soldiers, they have their vipers. They can get bitten by king cobras and have the venom just expelled back right out of the wounds by this nanomite technology. This is how powerful these nanomites are. Again, I feel like this was probably on the cusp of something actually happening real world, because I remember the science magazines or being news stories about nanomites and how that was going to be the future. So the Joes save the day. They chase Cobra from their base. The stupidest thing is that Cobra Commander injects Destro James McCullen, I guess I should refer to him as, because he goes by James, and he goes by his real identity until he gets injected with the nanomites, which the nanomites create the metal face that you're familiar with from the toy and comics line and cartoons and stuff. And even looking at, I thought it looked weird back then. Looking at it now, it still looks like the silver-headed annoying orange. It's just I swear, like, the eyeballs are misplaced, and it's just googly eyes, and his mouth isn't right. We'll put that on the hate list. I don't really care for. I don't know. How do you do Destro? How would you do a modern Destro, I guess, is the question. I mean, I guess they tried their best by explaining it away with the nanomites, because in the cartoon, he had a metal head. He was expressive. He could emote. We're not going to cover our actor and put him in a metal mask and then ask him to emote. So I guess this is the best way to do it, but this was early 2000s. Well, not even early. This is mid 2000s technology. It looked bad. But then the ultimate insult was that, right then and there, the Doctor becomes Cobra Commander, and he goes to jail. I've seen a few other reviews where they're like, yeah, if he would have kept his mouth shut, he would have been fine. They could have said, oh, I'm under the tutelage of something else. To me, it just doesn't make sense, because we don't know, who's the other power? Where are the soldiers coming from? Where are the Vipers coming from? Who are the Vipers? I mean, I guess they were under the control of Mindbender, maybe. I mean, we don't really get into Serpentor, and the next movie doesn't really explain into it otherwise. And again, I just said, I don't really necessarily want in-depth commentary on my G.I. Joe cartoon movie, but yeah. In comparison, I mean, last week's episode I did G.I. Joe Resolute, which was the cartoon, which dropped in the same year, and had some kind of hallmarks. I think that there were a little bit of connections to this live action movie, but I think that the cartoon did it way better than this movie. I don't know, everybody's kind of it's all focused on Duke and Ripcord. I mean, I guess Scarlet gets a little bit of time to shine in the beginning. I guess she gets some action towards the end. There's some Snake Eyes action. I guess Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow do have a fight scene towards the end of the movie. They fight within, I believe it's a reactor of some sort. But I feel that Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes get more justice in the sequel than they do in this particular film. They kill off or wound majority of the Joes anyway. I mean, it's besides the handful of Joes that you see in the beginning of the movie, you kind of see them at the end, which is why I was saying that I would rather see special ops or special missions, so you could see them as individuals versus just a whole bunch of faceless blah. Yeah, I mean, I guess Breaker gets a little bit more time to shine. He does his thing. You get to see him do his speciality. They did cover Girl dirty. They just made her a secretary and she dies. Spoilers. Oh, another one that I was misled was Brandon Fraser. I always thought Brandon Fraser was Sergeant Slaughter. I always thought that was the reference. Apparently, he's a character called Sergeant Stone. So, if you thought the same as me, you are wrong. Okay, how does it feel to be me? I guess it's that time of the show where we rank this movie from 1 to cats. 1 being the best, 3 being the worst, and then there's cats way down there. And so far, we have G.I. Joe Resolute as the 1 spot. We have nothing in the 2 spot. We have G.I. Joe the movie in the 3 spot. And then we have Cats. Where would I put Rise of Cobra? That's a tough one. It's definitely not a number 1 spot. It's not. I really like Resolute. I really would have liked them to do. They should have done Resolute as the live action movie and call it a day. Put those people in charge. Let them make the next live action movie. But is it as bad as G.I. Joe the movie? I don't think it's a number 2 spot. I'm going to have to go with that, and I don't think it's on equal par with Cats. I'm actually going to have to put The Rise of Cobra at the number 3 spot with G.I. Joe the movies. So our rankings are G.I. Joe Resolute at number 1, Nothing at number 2, and at the number 3 spot, G.I. Joe the movie and The Rise of Cobra, and then of course Cats. I thank you for tuning in to another episode of BestowCast, and I hope that we're all bonding over G.I. Joe. We're almost there. We've got 2 more live action movies, and let me know what you think about this. Did I rank this right? Do you agree with this ranking? Comment wherever you can comment. Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you can, and I will catch you next week. Have a good one.